Hi, Helle. My name is Ravi, and thank you so much for joining at Webfit News. How are you doing today?
Good. Thank you so much for having me.
Most welcome. And for our audience, I'm sure some must have already seen you online or seen your video, but would you like to, introduce yourself?
Well, yeah, there's really not that much to say. My name is Helle. I am a journalist from Norway and I cover local affairs and sometimes also foreign policy for my newspaper, Dagsavisen. I recently started working there as a commentator.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. And I will not take, much time, build a platform and talk about it. I directly jump in, on the right amount of question, which I'm sure, audience want to hear from you. Now, before that moment, involving, some very, involving leaders, how closely had you followed Indian politics and Indian media before that?
It's definitely not a topic that I cover daily. I think, in general, Western media, Norwegian media, all countries in Europe and also the US. I think the US does a better job, though, but I think we should cover Asia more. But I think that since it's not proximate or like it's not that close,
Hmm.
it's one of those things that get neglected. So I had more covered US politics and of course, we're looking closely here in Norway as well on what's going on in our neighbor countries and with the Greenland situation. But yeah, definitely not. India's definitely not been my cover area.
No, no, definitely, and I appreciate that, and thank you so much for being so honest, and you're not hesitant to say what you have, what is your knowledge base, which is very good. Now, when you ask your question, what exactly was your intention?
I think that a question is just the question. The intention is, of course, to try to get answers. And in a setting like that where there is already um it's kind of set that you're not going to have time for questions. There's not going to be a press conference where each reporter goes up to the microphone and asks one or two questions. So to my like the way I saw it was that by raising my voice and uh, asking a question right before Moody had exited the room, I
Mhm.
was doing my job as a journalist, which is to try to get answers from a power that also doesn't want to answer.
Definitely. So, but did you expect it that your question, to become such a major talking points internationally?
No, definitely not. I was when I posted it on X, I was hoping that it would spark a discussion, but I think I thought maybe it would spark a discussion among some people in India,
Mhm.
and definitely not um, so many millions in India. So it was definitely a huge shock to me to see how it blew up so quickly, and also how the Indian media quickly jumped on the topic too. And also that they didn't jump on the topic of press freedom, but that they jumped on writing about me, which was
Definitely,
that was
definitely.
weird to me.
Right, right. And since you picked up that no word press freedom, I have one question that some people
Yeah.
saw your question as a press freedom issue, and others saw it disrespectful to a
Yeah.
visiting foreigner leader. Now, how do you respond to that criticism?
Well, I think all criticism is and constructive criticism is welcomed, and I do think that I just see journalism very differently than many others do, because to me journalism should be done in a critical manner, and of course that means sometimes that the question is doesn't it's not always going to be with calmness that maybe a state leader, that, like, for example, my prime minister of course, he has a much different tone when he welcomes the state leaders than I, as a journalist, should have. We have very different functions in our society. But to my kind of the way I think journalism should be done is that it should be sharp, and the question should be sometimes the question has to be a little bit confrontational, and that's just how it is. And my job isn't to sugarcoat facts.
Totally agree to that, But as a journalist, do you believe that leaders should answer the question from the media during international visits?
Yes, I do. And I especially believe that if you're in a democracy, because the fourth estate is so important and vital for a functioning democracy. So, yeah, I do think that if you're at a state visit in a country, you should answer some questions from the press. And there are many state leaders that come to Norway and answer questions from the press. An example I have is from Macron was here last year, and he didn't take a lot of questions, but he took a few from the Norwegian press, and he also took a few from the French press in a joint press briefing. And then, of course, the Norwegian journalists usually will go together and figure out, okay, which two questions should we ask him? And that's not ideal either, because that means that there's a lot of questions that don't get an answer, but then at least we have the opportunity to question someone with a lot of power. So yeah, I do think that.
Okay, since we are talking about around press freedom, I'll stick to that. And my next question again is is press freedom, in your view, only what journalists asking question, or also understanding the format and the protocol of an event?
So that depends. I think that press freedom, of course, there has to be some certain it really depends, because I think in general I also like to follow just the general schedule. I like to, when I see that the interview slots are at 10, I do them at 10. I'm never usually in a rush. But sometimes if state leaders, if the protocol is too strict, we can't always just go after what is said. Our job is also to challenge how the format is too. And I think that's important, and something that a lot of people might have not understand, that our job is to actually also challenge the format, which is what I also did.
Okay. Since we are talking about format, do you believe that every media interaction is the same, or should journalists distinguish between a press conference and a press briefing, a media statement and a photo opportunity?
So first of all, this is kind of funny, but the prime minister called the thing a press conference. Also afterwards in the statement, but I don't use too much time to evaluate the wording of that. I would have asked the question if it was a press brief too, because in Norway there's kind of this contract where if the prime minister or any politician invites the press, we are not just there to listen to talking points. Then that's government work to write down talking points and send out their statements. That's not our job. Our job is to also be able to question the topic of the day or other topics that we have in mind that are going on in Norway. There are other times where also in journalists in Norway, the prime minister or any other politician have a press conference about something, and then the journalist will come there and ask about something completely different.
Okay, but do you think that that format was accepted and clearly understood by everyone in the room that time on that day?
The format, I think the format was accepted by everyone in the room, but I challenged the format, so that was what I did.
Okay, fair enough. Now I'd like to move towards Indian and global perception on that. So many Indians felt that India was being judged through a Western media lens. So do you understand why that reaction happened?
I think that's an important criticism, and something that I also think in general that uh, is a little bit apart to what I was saying earlier. That yes, I think the West has a lot to learn about Asian countries in general. But to me, having spoken to so many great journalists of India that are really trying to do the critical work,
Right.
that and they're on the ground, really
Hmm.
uh, trying to lift important stories and uh, ask also or try to like get those very sensitive topics that are also in some sense endangering their lives. They're trying to get that out. So when spoken to so many of them, and they valued my question. So to me, I think that's very important to me that some part of the Indian population really have given me a lot of support, and then there are others that did not approve of the question, and that's okay. Both those sides are valid. You can be critical of my journalism, or you can be approving of my journalism, and I don't. But I think that the discussion is nice.
Definitely, definitely. But India is the world's largest democracy with complex media environment, many languages, right? Hundreds of languages are there and
Yeah.
hundreds of television channels, newspaper, digital platform. So how do you think, European journalists understand that complexity?
I definitely think we haven't covered it enough because um, I think some shock uh, to um, for those that did follow this, and I think it's a lot bigger for those who followed it than the rest of the world. Like this hasn't been that. This was covered in Norway, but it didn't
Hmm.
become a huge media story in Norway. So it's different in India than it is here. But for those in the West that did follow this, I do think we got a little bit of a broader understanding of how the media is working now under the current Indian Prime Minister, and how it has developed under him. And it's alarming. So that's what I will say on that.
Okay, but I'll be sticking more towards this Western media. Do you think that Western media sometimes simplifies India into one narrow political story?
That's a good question. I think that because I do think that it's not a black and white, and there's usually never a black and white in
Hmm.
most, especially when you're like India is a huge nation with so many people living there. So yeah, it's definitely more. I don't think you can ever have a great understanding of a country of that size and all of the issues. So that wasn't my intention was not to try to frame India, the whole political system, the religious system. I've
Hmm.
said in most of my interviews before, I'm not here to try to um, educate anyone on those types of things because that's not my goal nor expertise. The only thing I was raising with my question was press freedom.
Definitely, definitely. But when you're covering a country as a large and a diverse as India, what responsibility does an international journalist have to understand its history, culture, and political context? Don't you think that is something?
I think that you should ask someone that covers India on a daily basis for
Mhm.
maybe Al Jazeera or some of them. Well, not Al Jazeera, BBC or someone, because I don't cover India daily. I cover my prime minister,
Mhm.
and I think for me it was important to talk to or as since I'm a Norwegian journalist and I cover
Mhm.
Norwegian politics and the Norwegian government, my
Okay.
job is also to challenge the powers that we cooperate with and the partnerships that we start. So, yeah, that question I think maybe someone else should answer.
Okay. Fair enough. No issues. Now, do you think that Indian public has a right to challenge a foreign journalists when they feel their country is being misrepresented?
Oh, yes, definitely. I welcome that discussion. I think
Yeah.
that's a nice discussion to have.
Definitely, and I appreciate, you are answering from your heart, and you're being, straightforward and honest. Thank you so much for that. Now, one question, when we started this campaign that we are going to Webfit News is going to have a conversation with you. One question many people in the Indian diaspora are asking is this: do you know whether the event was a press conference or a press briefing? I know we did talk about it, but do you want to just give a two-liner answer?
So I know that it was set up as it's the prime minister called it a press conference,
Okay.
and we knew that there weren't going to be any questions in advance. That was said. So I think this question talked about so many times, but I
Right.
try to say it again. To me, it really wouldn't matter if it was a press brief or a press conference, because journalism should be challenging powers, and also those powers that don't want to uh, hold themselves accountable to journalists and hence also the public.
Definitely, definitely. Now I'm moving towards, where we will talk about nation, country, and identity. Another point some Indians raise is about how India is understood internationally. Do you see India only as a modern state, or also as a civilization with a much older national identity?
Oh, that's a that's a large question. I think you're both, because India has so much history, and also, yeah, I think for me, it's um, uh, it's also differences because my country is so small, India is
Right.
so large. It does have just such a um, also, of course, history with the British Empire, and yeah, it's so complex.
Definitely, and then you will, you'll agree to me that there is a difference between a country as a political state and a nation as a people, culture, civilization. So, how do you understand that distinction?
Ooh, hmm. Well,
Because, yeah, go ahead.
the of course, as I see, when I read my comment section on Instagram, for example, there's so many people that don't agree with the current political system in India. So, of course, there is the separation of politics and how things are done in India and a nation as a whole. That's also why
Mhm.
I was able to, when it all happened, and my inbox on Instagram was I had about 5 messages a minute, um direct messages of people thanking me. So that's also why I wanted to thank them, because I just had no idea how impactful my question would be to a part of the population. So I also think that's something with India, because there's just so many people there that there's just going to be differences in political opinions and how they view society based on structures that are very old.
Definitely, definitely. Now, since you talked about online reactions and the messages which you're receiving, now do you think that you receive strong criticism online? Some of it may have been unfair or abusive, and but some was genuine disagreement. How do you separate criticism from abuse?
Well, I think abuse is, of course, deep fakes, targeting my online accounts, getting me suspended from Instagram and Facebook,
Mhm.
and also trying to monetize on my name. Those types of things are abuse. And discussion, also harsh criticism, is a part of public conversation, and also facilitating a good discussion environment online. So that's how I see it.
Okay, okay. But some Indians, Indian viewers believe your question was not neutral journalism, but a political statement. What would you say
Mm.
to them?
It definitely was meant as neutral, and but I do get that if you haven't been exposed too much to critical and confrontational journalism and tougher questions, and don't have that displayed a lot,
Hmm.
then you might have seen my question as loaded. And of course, it was contrasting, you know. So I get that the contrasts were in. I can understand why some people believe that, because it was a kind of a contrast question where you put freest press and uh, this current situation with the Indian Prime Minister up against each other.
Okay. But in that case, since you again brought in the press freedom, would you accept that the press freedom also includes the public, no, public freedom to question journalists?
Oh, yeah, I think I answered that earlier too. That I think it's a. I like the. I've also tried to respond to a few of the questions from the public that I see online, and I respond in my direct messages to when I see something that I think I should try to respond to, and that I haven't responded to in all the interviews I've given. So yeah, the press freedom is also usually a part of the freedom to speak and right to information. It's a part of that segment. So also in the new current media environment that we live in, where everyone is could become a content creator or something, then press freedom is continuously evolving and developing.
Definitely. And has this experience, what you have gone through, from last 2 months, has this experience made you rethink how journalists should ask question in sensitive diplomatic settings?
No, not at all.
Okay, okay, fair enough. Now, looking back now, do you still stand by the question exactly as it was asked?
Oh yes, I would ask that question again.
So you saying that you'll ask the same question in the same way again?
Yes, wouldn't have done anything different in that first press conference.
And were you willing to acknowledge that the wording or the timing may have been seen as unfair by many Indians?
Yeah, I acknowledge that it might have been seen as, I acknowledge the opinion, but I
Mhm.
would 100% do it at the exact same time with the exact same phrasing and the exact same voice level. Again, it was, yeah, if it was tomorrow, I'd do the exact same thing again.
Okay. Now, what would you say directly to the Indian diaspora in New Zealand who felt offended by that moment?
Mm. Well, I can't really. I think it's okay to journalism should spark a debate,
Mhm.
and I can't really account for someone's feelings, because I think that's, if you're a journalist and you have continually monitor have some parts of the population, the world population might view it, you're never going to be doing your job, because then you're not a journalist. Because I have other discussions in Norway, let's say, to actually right now I'm writing a lot about uh, the new train station in Oslo, and a lot of people would agree with my point of view that we should build a train station, and have more a viewer, or have more of the public be able to say how the design of the building should look, whereas
Mhm.
a lot of people are not interested in that. So journalism, there's always going to be people that are pro something and against something, you know.
Okay. So, do you believe that this controversy can still become a constructive conversation about journalism, respect, and democratic accountability?
Yes, I think it did become that.
Okay. Okay. So I think we have covered many of the questions which we wanted to ask, and we want to open it for you to say anything, because right now people in Auckland and New Zealand are watching you. And before that, we want to thank you for answering these questions. And at Webfit News, our aim is to not to silence journalists or public figures, but to ask questions from all sides. We appreciate your joining us this conversation today.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you so much.
Most welcome, and thank you. I'm not sure what time it is, and I think you just started your day Friday. We
Yes.
are ready to do our party on Friday weekend.
Ah, that's amazing.
Yeah. So how are things? What's your next move? What's your planning? What's your plan for the future? Did anything good come to your on your way?
I think most of all, I think to me, I'm now that it's soon been a month, and it's the last few weeks have flown by, but I'm very thankful to all the Indian people that appreciated my journalism. I think it will probably be the most, and that's weird to me. I think it'll probably be one of the most valuable questions that I've ever asked anyone. So, and I think it'll be that in that way in 80, 90 years too. So it's was a good, you're not supposed to say you're proud of yourself, but I'm very proud of myself for asking that question to the Indian Prime Minister.
Okay. Thank you so much again, Helen, for joining, and I appreciate that, and have a great weekend. And
You
thank you so
too.
much for
Have a
talking
great
to Webfit.
weekend. And
Thank you.
goodbye to everyone.
Thank you.